Hello, friends. Last Friday we were doing kirtan with storytelling, and we were talking about the life of Saint Theresa of Avila when the power went out. So we posted what we had of that talk on the internet yesterday, and today I'm going to continue talking a little bit more about Saint Theresa of Avila. It's very important and helpful for us to study the lives of the saints. They are the way showers. They are the ones who have achieved what the goal of life is, to commune with God, to be one with God. And so the struggles that they go through, the attitudes that they have, it's tremendously helpful. Saint Theresa suffered very much from her friends not understanding her, the church being very wary of her experiences. She had a very difficult time. Sometimes she even had to enter a town at night to avoid causing a riot. And it was very, very difficult. Her life was not easy. I remember Swami saying once of her that she was in a verbal tussle with a very official, high up in the church kind of person, and he was grilling her about her experiences. It might have been the Inquisition, one of those people. I don't remember. I don't think Swami said, but the comment that this man made about Theresa afterwards is, "She's no woman, she's a bearded man," because she was so intelligent and spoke so well and was very good at winning the arguments that he was waging against her. And so where I left off last time when the power went out was that she had been very ill. She just collapsed. One writing that I read said that it was malaria. I don't know if that's absolutely true, but anyway, she collapsed at the convent. They sent her home, and her life was despaired of. They just didn't know what to do for her. And she was unresponsive. She had no pulse that they could find. And for 4 days, she just laid there, seemingly dead. And nuns from the convent came twice. The first time demanding the body, it's time to bury her. They dug the grave, and her father said, "No, you can't have her body. She's going to come out of this. She is not dead." And they just thought he was a madman. And finally, after 4 days, the nuns came again, demanding that they bury Theresa, and walked right into the room where she was to find her sitting on the bed, talking with her father. So after that, she had a very difficult time. She couldn't pray. I think I talked about this in the last one too, but just to reiterate, she was too ill to pray. She was in such bad health, and so she used it as an excuse not to pray. And what she finally came to was that she had been using that as an excuse. And so she said, "Prayer is an act of love. Words are not needed." Even if sickness distracts from thoughts, all that is needed is the will to love. So we just have to turn our consciousness, just turn our hearts to God and give God that love that He is craving. It's the only thing that God wants from us. He has everything else. But we, of our own free will, have to turn to Him and love. So she says for years she hardly prayed at all under the guise of humility, she says. She thought as such a wicked sinner that she didn't deserve to pray. She didn't deserve to feel the love of God because she was such a bad person. So this is a saint we're talking about who feels that they're totally unworthy. So if we have feelings of inadequacy and feeling unworthy, we need to get rid of those feelings. We need to know, as a friend of mine in India, quoting the Bible would say, I am a daughter of the King. And that's how we need to feel, that we are sons and daughters of the Lord of the universe. And all He is asking of us is not perfection, but love. So let's take notice of what Theresa is saying here. Under the guise of humility, that it just doesn't, it's false. Yes, we have every reason to be humble. We have plenty of reason to be humble because we really are. But that's not an excuse not to pray. She goes on to say that to act that way is like a baby turning away from its mother. What is the result of that except death? And so we need to humbly come to God. When she was 41, a priest convinced her to go back to prayer, but she still found it difficult. I love this quotation from her. She says, prayer was difficult. I was more anxious for the hour of prayer to be over than I was to remain there. I don't know what heavy penance I would not have gladly undertaken rather than practice prayer. She was distracted very often. She says, my intellect is so wild that it doesn't seem to be anything else than a frantic madman no one can tie down. Have you ever meditated and felt the truth of what she's saying? Swami said one time in a meditation that he sat there patiently for an hour and checked his watch, and it had only been 5 minutes. So even St. Theresa, even Swamiji, all of us wait for that hour to be over. It's not unusual. We should not beat ourselves up for having these feelings and having these difficulties. If it were easy, it wouldn't be the right thing. God has made it difficult on purpose. We have to fight our way through this. He has to be sure that we really want Him above everything else. So we have to fight. She further says, and sympathizing with those who have trouble, a difficult time praying. She says, all the trials we endure cannot be compared to these interior battles. So, and yet she kept at it. Yet her experience gives us wonderful descriptions of mental prayer, for she says this about mental prayer. It is, in my opinion, nothing else than an intimate sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him who we know loves us. So that's the key. Dharmadas would often say, paraphrasing the three most important things in real estate, which are location, 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 the three most important things on the spiritual path are devotion, devotion, devotion. We bypass a lot of trouble if we open our hearts and love God. So, sometimes she would complain to her divine friend because she had a I got ahead of myself here. Oh, this is the rest of the quote. Okay. We want to spend time with God who loves us. And this is also her words. The important thing is not to think much, but to love much. And so do that which best stirs you to love. Love is not great delight, but rather the desire to please God in everything. You know, the farther we go along on the spiritual path, the more we realize that we don't want to do those things which creates a barrier between us and God. We just want to do the right thing so that we can move forward. After a while, you start to see the karma that we create by being unpleasant to people, by being unhappy in ourselves, the karma that we just accrue through negativity, gossiping, dislike of others, judgment, all those things, and it just becomes incredibly boring. You just want to let it go. People talk hatefully to you, and after a while you just ignore it. It's just not worth getting upset about. And that's part of calming the reactive process that is so important for us as meditators and Kriyabans. When Theresa did start praying again, when she got over being in false humility and so on, God gave her deep spiritual raptures. The prayer of quiet where God's presence overwhelmed her senses, where God overcame her with glorious joy and union that she felt as if the sun of God melt her soul away, the sun shining in the sky, melt her soul. Amazing. Sometimes her whole body was raised from the ground. She levitated, just like the Indian saints that we've read about. If she felt God was going to levitate her body, she would stretch out on the floor and call the nuns to come and sit on her and hold her down. She really did not like levitating because it drew such personal attention to her. Far from being excited about these events, she, quote, begged God very much not to give me any more favors in public. She was mortified by these things. In her books, she analyzed and dissects mystical experiences the way a scientist would. She never saw these gifts as rewards from God, but the way he chastised her. The more love she felt, the harder it was to offend God. And when we think about how am I going to overcome this bad habit or that bad habit, or all of those things, as Master said, when ecstasy comes, everything else goes. So again, if we just cultivate love, and how do we do that? We do that through chanting, through reading the scriptures, because it's so uplifting and illuminating to study the scriptures, to be very careful about the company that we keep. Can't spend too much time on the news. As the Bible says, if you are a friend of the world, it puts you at enmity with God. And so try to pull back from the world a little bit. We have to do our duty. We have to fulfill our obligations. We have to love the people in our world and try to serve. Service is very, very important. It cultivates love for the heart because service purifies the heart. We have to give. We have to feel God's energy flowing through us in service to others. And in that way, we start to know God because God is in every person. So these are some of the ways to cultivate that love. Chanting is very, very powerful because it focuses the mind. It gets the mind ready to meditate. It's a priceless tool in cultivating that devotion. She says, the memory of the favor God has granted does more to bring a person back to God than all the infernal punishments imaginable. So just as the saying goes, you can win people over better with honey than you can with vinegar. It's the love that changes hearts. So we can't just try to punish people for their wrongdoings. We have to help them to change. And the best way we can do that is by being a good example and sharing God's love, because that's what's magnetic. Nothing else is as magnetic as that love and joy of God. So I think I'll stop there for now and do some more tomorrow. But I strongly urge you to investigate the lives of the saints. Saint Theresa wrote a beautiful book called Interior Castle. You might want to explore that. It's a little heavy going sometimes. You know, she wrote it to sort of, she was told to write it, I think, by the Spanish Inquisition, or at least by her superiors, to explain what was going on with these experiences she had. So it's very intense. But there's other books written about her. I'll just close with one little story that I just love. So Teresa's in the convent kitchen. She's by herself, and she's eating a roasted partridge. And, you know, it's small, but she's holding it with both hands. It's greasy, it's roasted, it's got herbs in it. It's kind of a messy thing to be eating, and she's eating with great gusto and relish. And a group of ladies walk into the kitchen, not nuns, but visitors, and they were horrified. "My God, what are you doing?" they said. And she calmly looked up and she said, "There's a time for penance and a time for partridge." She said, "When I fast, and when I eat, I eat. And at the moment, I'm eating partridge." So let us live life with joy and with gusto and have a sense of humor. That's one of the wonderful things about Saint Theresa of Avila. She had a marvelous sense of humor. And she knew herself, and she was not to be bullied by anyone. And let's have that integrity and humility and love and humor, but most of all, love.